So yeah, maybe we can just start with the introductions. I will just go first. So hi everyone. I'm Rahel Demant. I'm the co-founder of XR Bootcamp. We are an online academy for virtual reality and augmented reality skills development. And yeah, I'm also a member of XR Inclusion, and we won the XR Inclusion Diversity and Inclusion Survey last year, and are happy to share our results today. And yeah, maybe Armand, you want to go next with your introduction?
Of course. Hi guys, my name is Armand. I am really passionate about creating the future and building the next digital platform for the human evolution. In the past few years, my focus has shifted to VR and AR. I've seen how I've seen the potential how these technologies can revolutionize our world in health, education, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and I really hope that empowered with community coupled with cutting edge XR technology, we will build a better and brighter future for humanity.
Thank you. Stewart?
Yes, my name is Stewart Lundy. I serve on different commissions in the state of Denver, Colorado. I also have a consultancy agency, and I do a lot of work with different nonprofits, things like that. I like to think of myself as a connector. As far as technology, this VR world we live in, this is a really pivotal time for a person with a disability, such as I have. And the technology of VR and different applications have been a way to level the playing field. So I'm really excited about this conference and talking about our report, and can't wait to get into it.
How about you, Stacy?
Awesome. I am Stacy Gordon, and I have been on the XR Inclusion board committee for, I think, since the very beginning with Taylor, and it's been really great to see it grow and to get this survey out. My own work comes from diversity, equity, and inclusion. I spend a lot of time working with Fortune 500 companies around the globe, helping CEOs and their executive teams really start to pay attention to the work that needs to be done and to move from performative action to action with impact. So I'm excited to see how we can do that in the XR world, especially as startup companies are, where it's like, let's build it right from the beginning, right? Instead of having to change it later. And so that's why I'm involved here, and hope that we'll be able to make a difference. And this report is something that I think we're all very proud of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited to just measure the status quo right now, and then hopefully we can sit here next year and report on much, much better results, right? I hope as an industry we can commit to that.
Definitely.
%. Oops, it seems like we lost somebody. What happened?
He'll be back, I think.
Okay, that's great.
So can you?
Gotta love technology.
Really, you do gotta love it.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So, by the way, in the audience, if you're interested in downloading this report, feel free to go to xrinclusion.org, and within a few seconds, you will have it. So yeah, just to start and just to see who we were actually working with. I mean, it was very open. Like, we invited everyone who wanted to share their basically their opinions and what they think and how they are basically being included in the XR industry and how they are basically working. So maybe start off with who has participated in survey. So we had 200 people participating. And and visually it's basically represented very nicely here. So the majority came from the United States, but we also have a large participation from South America, and also And of course, we are hoping that that we can definitely like increase to a more global audience next year, of course. But the more XR inclusion becomes known, and the more we can actually share the survey, the more the hope that we can, of course, include more and more in a more diverse range of people to the survey. Yeah, and we also asked, of course, for which categories basically describe you. And here, we have basically from large majority was white who took the survey, but I think we also got like a good coverage of other categories. So for us, it was also like maybe to share that when we were discussing how to basically ask the questions. It's always like very difficult to basically describe best where people are coming from, or how basically people define themselves. So and we are always looking also for feedback for what we can improve in all these different questions, and how we can maybe name them better. So this is about basically who was mostly participating in the survey. Is there something that you would add from to describe who was participating in the survey?
No.
You're good. Okay. Or was there something that stood out to you in general, like from what we've seen in terms of who was participating?
Go for it. I was just going to say that I think that we did a good job in getting as much as we could from everybody.
Yeah, I think we pretty much know, like, we did a good job in defining who took it, and we can also definitely hear very well how diversity increases basically from year to year in terms of participation.
I really feel that that since the industry is relatively new, that this is we did the best we could to actually capture every vertical, every audience, every ethnicity, everybody in this survey. And that's what I'm really proud of, and I really can't wait to see how these results evolve in the next 5 to 10 years. We are very fortunate to be here where we are right now, and
Definitely. So, Stewart, you're back. Yeah. So maybe we can maybe Stacy, do you want to share more about the company?
I think a lot of this, as you said, this is the beginning. So we're looking at status quo, kind of the very beginning. It was interesting to see which companies, actually have a code of conduct or structured hiring processes, and especially if you look at the last one, which is structured and consistent, right, review and performance evaluation process. And so to see that 20% of people are unsure what they even have, right? We always, when we look at survey data, it's always interesting to see what when people say they're not sure, right? Or they don't know. That's always a problem, because it means there's there's not clarity, right? So it's very interesting to see that, and that means that we have to do work. There's no definitive answer. And it shows that there's definitely work to do. So I think whether or not we can show progress next year is going to depend on how much people actually pay attention to this and take action, and move forward with making the requisite updates that are needed. Because otherwise, this survey will look exactly the same next year, and that's not what we want at all. So.
So we can also go more. Do you want to go more into detail into the subsections?
No, I mean, just in general, in terms of, I think as we do all of these surveys, right, really being able to look at the demographics of it and see who responded and who didn't. And I think to your point, you mentioned earlier that we did a decent job of getting, I think, especially more women involved, because there is a pervasive idea that it's mostly men in tech, right? And if you look at the numbers, the demographics of how many women responded, it's pretty high. So I think that alone starts to just change the perspective, and this this idea that we have, this false narrative that there are no women in tech, because we know that's not the case. And so really being able to use our networks to increase the number of women, the number of people of color, the number of people with disabilities who respond, so that we can, really start to see their perspectives in this survey process.
Definitely. Awesome. So yeah, and we have actually, like, what we're seeing is also that the number of like people basically who do have a structured and consistent review and performance evaluation process, or basically defined processes overall, it's actually, I mean, it's like, and the no part is actually quite high most of the time, like above 30%. And of course, that's one of the numbers I would personally also love to, or even like up to 40% even. That's also one of the numbers I would love to see, yeah, go down a little. Stewart, do you want to continue basically with the training part?
I think we lost Stewart again.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise, Armand, do you want to already move over to the design practices? Armand, are you there? You're muted.
You are right. Okay, guys. So for design practices questions, does your company consider diversity and inclusion in the design of VR and AR design products? 40.43% said always. 31.43 sometimes, never. 5.71. Not sure. 10.86. Rather not say. 0.57. And other was 4%. And as you could,
Want to go over this?
Yeah, as general, 75% of respondents state that their companies always or sometimes consider diversity and inclusion in design, VR, AR products and services, and less than 6% respondents report that they do not. With faith and religion, religious respondents reported that their companies use inclusive and inclusive and diversity design practices to a slight higher degree than non-religious respondents, 8 to 10 and versus to 7 to 10. Disabilities, responsibility, and the respondents with disabilities other than learning disabilities were less likely to report their companies consider inclusivity and diversity, the product and service and design, 310 versus 510. And the last one, job role. Founders and C-suite respondents are confident that their company does consider D&I in their product and service design. Nearly all respondents in these two categories said always or sometimes. Founders being most prone to say always, 7 to 10 say always, whereas only 1/3 of senior and middle managers agreed to the statement.
Right. And before we move on to the different slide, I mean, I think that the part of this that I think Stewart would say if he was here, right, is that, I mean, I'm just going to call it like it is. I mean, even this is BS, right? Because you can't possibly have founders saying that that they're confident that they consider diversity and inclusion in their product and service design when they're not taking into account how that's going to affect people with disabilities, right? And I think Stewart always talks about the fact that we don't pay attention to really looking at that from the beginning and building it in on the front end versus waiting until somebody complains about it later and then trying to reverse engineer or having to, update the product and create new product design afterwards, right? So I think as we look at product design for VR and AR, when we say diversity, we first have to ask, what do we mean? Because do we just mean gender diversity? Do we mean people with disabilities? Like, who do we mean? And so that's also part of the conversation around, are we really doing this? And I think for founders to say that they always consider diversity, they may think it, but that's a lot of the work that I do, right? Where there is a disconnect. There's a very big disconnect between what people say they're doing and what they're actually doing. And that's why we then do the unconscious bias training, right? And the education around that, because we over-report what we, the effectiveness, and we over-report our focus on it when we underperform when it comes to these areas.
Well said.
And do you think that we had basically also, I mean, I think 200 is actually quite a good number, but do you think we had a certain bias in terms of, because I mean, we reached out, I mean, XR inclusion team was quite a big team, and everyone reached out basically to their contacts and connections in the XR industry. Do you think we had a certain bias and who was responding, that people we reached out to was more, of course, more interested in the whole diversity and inclusion topics than maybe a more broader overview over the industry? Or do you think we could?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. And I think that's part of it, right? We're going to go to our networks first, right? And get as many people as possible. The goal of this is now to be able to multiply that and to be able to get a broader base of people responding. And again, I'm not saying that people who responded aren't interested in diversity and inclusion, but what I am saying is, what I see over and over and over again, I will work with CEOs and their teams who say, we are focusing on diversity and inclusion, but then when you do the survey in their company, like an engagement survey, and we ask employees what they think, oh, it's completely different, right? They have a completely different perspective of what diversity and inclusion looks like. So what I'm saying is that this is why a lot of leaders and founders get accused of, being all talk, because we talk about it and we say it, but then we have to actually look at, well, what's the impact? Are we really looking at our company, and are we really making sure that we have reviewed our practices, our policies, and our procedures? So that's the whole point of doing this survey, is to get people starting to think about it, and starting down the road on this journey. But then, I'm just saying, I'm imploring everyone who's listening, right, who pays attention, to actually then start to make that change, right, to actually take the action that's needed.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it will be interesting also to compare, right? If we are seeing maybe next year, 1,000 people filling in this survey are actually going, our percentage is going more down because the diversity of respondents is basically going up, or are we actually going to be able to improve the results from the first time? So I'm very curious on seeing that.
Yeah, totally.
So Stewart, do you want to go over the training part?
Yes, hold just a second here. Let's see. Oh.
Should I start here with this survey, with these survey results? We cannot hear you. Yeah. We cannot hear you. Maybe there's a microphone problem. Stewart, can you hear me?
I think he's speaking, but he can't hear us.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I see something says muted. The screen share says it's weird.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something we can do.
No worries. Well, what we can do while Stewart's trying to get his sound back, in terms of the training, I think where what we're looking at is what companies, are actually providing training, right? So whether they're providing diversity training, inclusion training, harassment training, unconscious bias training. And the interesting thing here, right, is usually, most people say, well, aren't diversity and inclusion training kind of the same thing? And so just looking at the numbers overall, right, harassment training should be a yes for everyone because we're required to do it. At least in the United States we are, right? But so it depends on where people are. Outside of the United States, you probably have a lot of the people that say yes because they're in the United States, and we are required. Outside of that, what we find, regardless, is harassment training. We are required to provide, but we've also seen that it's not effective, right? Unconscious bias training, we're not required to provide, and we're still getting, concerns around whether or not it's effective. I know we've seen in the United States that certain types of training got banned by our prior president. In the UK, the UK government has banned certain types of training right now around unconscious bias. And they are doing it under the guise of, well, this training doesn't work, right? So we have to say, well, first, are we providing it? And then two, what's the impact in order to be able to see, does it work? So I think it's great that some companies are doing it, but you can see here that many companies are not, almost 50% across the board are not providing training. So I think it's really important that we don't just provide training, but that we provide effective training. So, and that going into training with the idea that we're going to come out of it somehow changed after a 60 or a 90-minute session is kind of a silly expectation, right?
Yeah, definitely. And for all the types of different trainings, we're actually seeing quite similar results. I mean, yeah, it's almost up to
across the board.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah, there's not so much.
Yeah, and so I think we did put into the, I can't remember if we put it into the survey, but I think that one of the resources that we provide is the unconscious bias training that I actually do on LinkedIn Learning. And it's 24 minutes, right? And I tell people this is not training. It's really, and it's an awareness builder is what it is. And so I think that's the other thing. I'm always a very big stickler about definitions and understanding, well, what do you mean when you say training? What do you mean when you say education? And what does that look like? So I think when you're creating a company and you have, you're providing this, you want to make sure you are clear of what the expectation is and that the individuals going through it know what the purpose is as well, right? So that everyone's on the same page and we can manage expectations and outcomes.
Yeah, that's definitely very important. And I would also like to invite everyone here in the audience also to go to extrainclusion.org. There's also a startup kit and a company kit, basically, where we basically collected all the best practices and tips and tricks, on how to improve diversity and inclusion in your companies. So that's definitely also one of the reasons to sign up. Stewart, can we hear you now? No, I don't think so. Okay, great. I mean, in general, is there a result that you would like to point out that is very striking to you, or that you would like to emphasis?
I would like to say that it's not a result. It's more of a, the process. And I'm really, really, really proud of what this group has been able to achieve in the last year. I remember being there from like day one, when we were all meeting together, and we really asked ourselves, how can we measure the results in the XR industry so that we can make a change? And we faced our obstacles, and the survey evolved, and then when we put it out there for everybody to take, and we saw how these results came in real time, it just shows you that how a community, once put together with a focus or a mission to make a better world, we could do so much. And I really, really cannot wait to see how this survey, XR inclusion, evolves in how it evolves here in about 5 or 10 years. It's going to be a remarkable world hearing about, yeah, we're literally building the future. And that's what I'm so proud to be a part of with this group.
Yeah, this is it's been really good to be able to work together, right, for people around the globe. Did we get Stewart? Oh, I thought I heard Stewart. I was like, yeah, okay. And so I think some of the things that are interesting too is just, we ask questions like, to what extent do you feel that you can speak openly with your company? We went through evaluation and compensation. We looked at sense of belonging. We looked at feelings of respect. And so these are all things that I think are really important to be paying attention to as we're working on creating companies that are going to be truly inclusive. We talked about the fact that less than half of the respondents reported that their company has a structured and consistent hiring practice. And that is a huge sore spot for me, but personally, because I used to work as a recruiter. I love, hiring and being able to help people find work. And it was even lower, right, for people who had disabilities and were not heterosexual. So we are seeing that workplaces are not inclusive. And so we really have an opportunity to establish more structure, to create more discipline around hiring practices, and start standardizing interviewing questions, creating rubrics, and especially post-rejection candidate evaluations. I think it was, oh gosh, I'm going to forget the name of the company now. It's a big marketing company that actually, the HubSpot, that actually provides feedback to candidates after the interview now. That's huge, to be able to give candidates feedback and let them know why they didn't get the job, right? Or what they could improve on, so they don't keep making the same mistake over and over again in job interviews. I spend a lot of time hanging out on LinkedIn, and you see people being frustrated about the hiring process and about being unemployed for months on end and not getting any kind of real opportunity. But yet on the same plane, we have people saying, oh, I can't fill this job. There's nobody qualified. And it's like, the two things don't compute, right? We have all these people over here who can't find work, and we have all these people over here saying, I have jobs, but I can't find people. There's a disconnect, right? And a lot of that disconnect has to do with who employers really deem to be suitable for these jobs. And that is steeped in bias, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Can you guys?
Yeah.
Now.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties. I just want to speak to, having the job market is messed up for a person that's been a disability for quite a while now. Just going into that and having to explain to your things that are on his or her employer list as far as application, like lifting 10 pounds. For me, lifting 10 pounds, that I can't lift 10 pounds. So some language on just the application alone is just it's not taken into consideration that you may be hiring a person with a disability. So sometimes that's an issue. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear a lot of what you were saying before. So if this is out of the context, I apologize. So.
Was there something you wanted to add to the training aspect, Stewart?
Yeah, where are we at? Because I'm sorry, I'm a little frustrated.
We did that. I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share your point of view on these results.
Yeah, like I said, the workplace is. I'm sorry, I'm really frustrated right now. Oh gosh, can I get somebody else to get that because I'm frustrated. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, Stewart, just so you know, while you were having technical difficulties, I did mention, because you made a really good point about the fact that we end up having to reverse engineer for people with disabilities. instead of building upfront. And I think that's something that, when we talk about building for and paying attention to diversity and inclusion, a lot of times when we say diversity, we really aren't thinking about people with disabilities, right? We might be thinking about gender, or we might be talking about race, but we're really not thinking about like everyone, and whether it's physical disability or mental disability. So I know you've got some really good thoughts around that. So I don't know if you
I guess technology, some crazy when I can't master it, but right, when people just don't understand that, just want to put it into one monolith. And I've gotten a lot as far as like different categories. Sometimes if they can't, it literally confuses the heck out of them. They don't know what to do. So, and because of being in a wheelchair and having a disability, sometimes you as an HR, sit down and talk to the individual instead of what's on the application. Because a lot of times what's on the application is a lot different than what is actually the person that's looking has low vision and considers himself a person who's blind. Okay, low vision is a little different because that low vision may need to adapt his screen to be his first screen to be bigger so they can see. They're not totally blind, but they may need a screen reader or something like that. So a lot of times the accessibility issues are, even after you get into the workplace, are sometimes a issue also.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it's really hard, and we're talking about technology, right? VR, AR, I don't even know how you would adapt, right? Like this is an area I am woefully ignorant of, right? And I admit that. And I think a lot of employers are as well, and will not admit it and just ignore it. And so I think that this is the opportunity, right, for people to start asking the questions and thinking about what can we do? Which of our jobs could be done by a person with a disability? And are we actively attempting to even hire for that?
Well, can I ask? Oh, go
ahead. No, go ahead.
I just had a question. So you said, how can we empower people to speak up and voice their opinion? Because it seems like, people don't want to, how do we empower people to speak up about those issues?
I think it's just I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to clarify. Do you mean people like the candidates who might have a disability, or do you mean people, the company who are hiring?
Both parties. Gotcha.
Oh, gosh. Personally, I think it's one of those situations where mindset can happen to you that you can't, and you can't. It's the one thing I've heard once. It's the one that you can join at any time in your. It for us right now. It's good tomorrow. That it's a mindset. It starts. If you have a company who are not thinking of folks with disabilities, because why would they? Take the mindset, well, not my problem, until that person has a disability, and then have a disability. Then it becomes a triumphant cause to get their child into accept. My mindset is about everything, and therefore you don't have to, as you said, retrofit. Have the mindset of, okay, have a disabled community with a disabled community, then I think that you would have a little bit more, a better perception of as a HR or company or what have you. So I think that if you are constantly engaged with the things that you want to understand, it's almost like learning another language. When you learn another language, you immerse yourself into that world. So I think that's the starting point, at least with me. I'm sorry, you probably wanted my mic muted again. I was talking.
No, we're listening.
No, that's a great point. And I think to also just to add to that, there's when we talk about, again, like I said, there's diversity and then there's inclusion. And so when we say diversity, it's like, yeah, that's great that we bring all the people together. But if we're not also focusing on how do we keep people in the workplace, that's the inclusion part. And so, and when we think about how companies can be paying attention and how can they be focusing, we talk a lot about Microsoft, and now they've got their commercial running talking about how they help people with disabilities, and that's wonderful. But it's like, are they the only one, right? Like, who are the employers that are paying attention, and maybe how have they done it? And if they spent more time, maybe just educating people and letting others see how they've done it, it would help, right? Because I think for many people, they don't know where to start. For some companies, they're like, what do I do? And so I do think it is good that what Microsoft has done is, it's awareness building, right? Sometimes you just don't even know what you don't know. You don't realize you're not paying attention. So starting with awareness, for some people, they're like, oh, that's a cop-out. People just need to act. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't act if you are not fully aware of what is missing and what you need to do and who you need to act for and on behalf of, right? So we have to start with awareness and building up the concept that this is an issue and it is solvable, right? It is something we can all work towards solving. And it doesn't have to be this thing that's out there that seems so difficult and so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of like
race.
I mean, it's like,
and also with disability. You know that one person that I have a black friend, or I have I don't know, the people that I know, they know several people, or they are immersed with the disability culture, and it is a culture. And I think that most people don't even know another person a person in a wheelchair or with a disability that they constantly have an ongoing conversation with. So sometimes I tell people, corporations also make friends with somebody who doesn't look like you, make friends with somebody who's not able-bodied. Maybe you can find out something from them, and then that affects your decision making as you go forward. I mean, I've met people and they say, well, hey, I never really thought about ramps until I met you. So sometimes it gets down to really personal relationships. It really does. As far as, the wanting to fix it, like you just said, fix something, but I have to know first, what do I fix? So if you're far removed from that world, you don't know. Like I said, the top, the person that built the, and why I can't. So I change that when I don't want someone to have to, not to say unfortunately, times people have to be directly affected if they care. I don't like that.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm finished.
Totally.
That's very valuable. Yeah. Anything else that you would like to add to this conversation? Is there anyone in the audience who maybe has some questions for us, or any questions about XR?
Oh, no,
There's some background noise there.
Yeah, well, I think some of the other things, I'm just looking at some of the other insights. So I know that the majority of the respondents to the survey experienced positive levels of inclusion, but it was noticeable that underrepresented groups experienced feeling less respected at work, right? Not only not feeling less respected, but not as fairly evaluated. and not as fairly compensated. And so as a result of that, they experienced a lower sense of belonging at work than the other respondents. So again, this is another space where, it's probably not a surprise, but it gives us an opportunity to evaluate current performance structures. And really, that's the inclusion piece, right? Looking to see how are we making sure that people are being fairly compensated across the board. And, I think it's really, there has just been a reluctance to look at it because, it's kind of like, well, look, let's just leave it alone. Let's not, rock the whatever, stir up sand, right? Let's not rock the boat. But I think at least in this community, I feel like there is opportunity because there are so many companies that are smaller and that are startups and that are doing it from the beginning. And so this is the opportunity to be thinking about this. It's so easy as a founder to say, oh, I need help. Let me reach into my network and grab my friend, my sorority brother, my, whatever, the person I went to college with. But when you do that, more than likely, you are going to be pulling in somebody who has this, same religious faith, same gender, same, socioeconomic status, same geographic location, right? You're just bringing in sameness. And we have to get away from that a little bit. And the only way we can do that is by broadening our networks. And that's why I also really enjoyed being part of the XR inclusion community, because there's so many of us from all over. That was what attracted me to it. It's like, this is truly a broad group of individuals who have just, different perspectives and viewpoints and are bringing different pieces together. And that's how we were able to get this survey done.
Yeah, that's a great final point. By the way, Stewart, you got a big shout out from AJ Creek, who says, my wife is wheelchair bound and she's listening in and saying, yes, include our voices in needed changes. Thank you, Stewart. So yes, very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for this talk and for coming here on panel with us. Yeah, otherwise, if there is nothing else to add, I think we can close this discussion. Sorry, you have to unmute yourself, Stewart and Emma. Oh, again.
Have a great week.
Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
Yes, enjoy, everyone. And I guess what we should just make the point, right, that resources. So don't forget, XR Inclusion does have resources for you. Take a look at I know that Rahel has put the link in a number of times, xrinclusion.org. So if you're looking, like I mentioned, the unconscious bias course is online. There are other resources and things in there. There's lists, there's places to kind of go to really start thinking about how we can start changing. And yes, you can find us all on LinkedIn. So do reach out and you can find us
in the area. So yeah, follow her. She's also putting out a lot of amazing content around that.
Awesome.
So,
all right. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Bye. Thank you all.